from Section 204. Heavy Hockey Podcast with Michael and Guess. Heavy hockey isn't dead. It's just getting started.
Hey, it's Michael here from the Heavy Hockey Podcast with the post-game 3 of the Oilers playoff series or play-in series against the Chicago Blackhawks, down 2-1. I've got as my guest today, Mr. Dean Millard from Podcast Alley. Thanks for joining me, Dean.
Thanks very much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Excellent. So I think we had you on, it's August, and we're talking hockey, and we're talking current hockey. Which is great. But, you joined me for a live stream. Who knows now, the last 4 months are a bit of a blur, but sometime between March and August. And I think lots has happened in your life. Tell me about some of the new things with Dean Millard.
Yeah, we've kind of grown a little bit at Podcast Alley. We've added, we have Sports and More, which is the first one we started. We have the Cannabis 101 podcast, which is an educational and entertainment type of podcast for people that are looking to smartly use cannabis. And now we have Tracking the Draft with Craig Button, with, of course, former NHL GM, Stanley Cup champion with the Stars, and director of scouting at TSN, Craig Button. And we basically look at the players in a few different ways, have a lot of fun, and it's neat to get back in the draft world again. I did the Pipeline Show with Guy Flaming for so long. So it's fun to get back into that world. And, every player could be a superstar in the draft, right? You just never know. So, and then now I'm actually doing some writing with the Daily Hive and their sports section, Offside. And so I cover a little bit about the Oilers and wrote that the Oilers should have started Mikko Koskinen. And I did write that before Game 1, which I thought was admitting that I was wrong about Mikko Koskinen back in my days in the radio when I thought he wasn't going to amount to anything. And he certainly has, and wrote about McDavid proving at least one critic wrong about his personality, and just finishing up an article about the Oilers facing elimination that'll hopefully come up tomorrow. So you can find people can find that at the Daily Hive.
Excellent. Well, yeah, it sounds like you've been busy while being locked in, and I guess that's all right for a podcaster. I mean, we do kind of everything remote as it is, and so it's business as usual for us. Just get to talk to more people because they got nowhere to go.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Good or bad, I guess, either way. So we're here today to talk about Game 3, and obviously it's fresh on your mind because you just did an article for Daily Hive. Lots on. I mean, you're on Twitter. I'm on Twitter. Lots to talk about there. I just Jason Strudwick, for instance, he just put a tweet out about. I mean, there's lots being made of this bad bounces for the Oilers. What's your thought on this? I mean, this is kind of the. I notice, in Oilers fans being as passionate as they are, what happens is, the first hour, if you watch Twitter, the first hour after a loss, it blows up and everybody's got their own opinion. And then it seems these trends start to happen. And the trend that I think is happening right now is Oilers fans, the ones that want to see the positive are blaming bad puck luck. Your thoughts on that for Game 3?
Well, I'll tell you this. When I worked at TSN 1260 and we would do the pre and post game show, anytime I wanted to get Jason Strudwick riled up, I would use that term, puck luck, because he absolutely hates it. And he's a former player, and I get it. A lot of people say you kind of create your own luck, and luck goes both ways. And, one of the players was asked about the bad ice last night and said, look, both teams are playing on the same ice. So, that's not a disadvantage for one team or the other. And when you take as many bad penalties as the Oilers did, you're going to get bad bounces against you. You're tempting fate. And you can argue the Kris Russel holding with his shoulder was a weird call, because I've never seen anybody be able, I saw Conor McGregor knock somebody out with his shoulder, but I've never seen anybody hold with their shoulder. But still, Archibald away from the play, Kyler Yamamoto right in the numbers. I mean, you just can't do that. And you saw the reaction on the bench. At least I did on some of the angles. James Neal at one point just throwing his hands up in the air because it was keeping those guys on the ice. I mean, the Blackhawks only scored 1 goal on those 6 power plays, but they also kept the stars of the Oilers on the bench and, getting cold for most of the game. And, as it was, the Stars did score the 3 goals that the Oilers had, but it just killed any kind of momentum the Oilers could build up.
And, I think what bothers me too is you talk about that puck luck. I mean, that's to me, I look at it and that's Chicago creating puck luck there. It's the way that they played. And that last goal, while unfortunate for Ethan Bear, was exactly what their game plan was. I mean, right off the draw, which they seemed to be winning all night, it goes back to D and the D just throws it at the net, right? And they're hoping for that. They're hoping for that, bounce around there. And, I guess, the one thing, and I'd love to hear a former player's opinion on this because, there's been some discussion. Is that Tippett's coaching there in terms of, like, if you watch that last goal, Nurse ends up sort of in no man's land in the slot there, looking like he's got to look for somebody to cover. Meanwhile, Saad and Taze are at the net, and Ethan Bear's all alone, not sure who to cover, and eventually, goes for the puck stop and gets the deflection. But that was the story all game. And I guess if if you're not going to win faceoffs, and you're not going to play it right, and you're going to be undisciplined, as it were. The end result was not a surprise. Did you, at any point in the game, feel comfortable with the 3-2 lead?
No, not the way that game 1, the Oilers were horrific in their own end, throwing pucks around. And last night, it doesn't matter. You can get away with losing faceoffs, and you can still cover your man. And you can get away with some things, but you can't get away with constantly letting shots through. And listen, there were instances where the Oilers did flog it up. I mean, Kris Russell's toe has good instincts to be able to get his foot on that one. Yeah. But the forwards just were basically giving the Hawks defensemen free pass. And, like Mata's shot and Slater Cuckoo's shot that gets through. Well, there's a reason those forwards are able to tip it. And, Ethan Bear tipping it, if anybody's complaining about that, just record the amount of times the defenseman or a forward deflects a puck out of harm's way versus the times it does go in. It does, there was lots of people that would always say, don't do that. And when I played goal, I hated when it happened, but I also appreciated the ones that got blocked. But the reason that those guys are having to do that the tip-ins are being happened is because the Hawks are getting free reign at the blue line. I mean, this is not like a far out strategy or a brand new strategy. This is kind of like hockey 101, clog up the shooting lanes, and the Oilers were late to the party. And if the defensemen I think are doing a good job battling, and even Darnell Nurse up in the kind of no man's land, as you pointed it out, but maybe he's trying to cover for nobody getting to the point. I'm not really sure. The fact of the matter is the 3 of the goals were just manufactured because nobody could get out and get in front of it, or at least cause the shot to go wide. Like, you don't always have to block the shot. You could just block the lane and force the defenseman into a different option, right? Like, there's a lot of different ways to do that without sacrificing your body or taking a shot in the shin or whatever it might be. The Oilers just didn't do a lot of it in that regard. And a lot of the other parts of their game were okay. I mean, there's the last 6 goals have come from 2 guys, but they've averaged over 4.5 goals or almost, or something like that, 13 goals in 3 games. They're providing the offense. They're just not cleaning things up in their own end.
Yeah, no, and that's been the problem really in all 3 games. I mean, that's not unique to last night, and it's just kind of interesting that they haven't made any adjustments in that regard. So it would seem, even for that matter, it was clear, going into Game 3 that the Blackhawks had adjusted a little bit too on how they were going to approach I think they seemingly threw more at the net last game than they did, in games 1 and 2. And I think part of that has to do with, the knowledge that they were going to win the majority of the faceoffs, right? And so, obviously the Oilers, the Oilers have some work to do there. What's your thought? I don't know if you listened to the panel in between periods, but Bieksa says the Oilers, have all of this now. They need a fourth line right-handed center. Your thought on that?
Well, listen, I think that I don't know specifically. Right-handed centers are kind of coveted by everybody, aren't they? They're like, they say sometimes you can never have enough. But I don't know. I don't know if the center issue is the biggest issue in the bottom six. You know what? I think you could use a right-handed center, sure, but I think the Oilers could use a motivated Zach Kassian more than anything, and he's buried. Like, this is a guy who had the golden goose, right? Started on the right wing with Connor McDavid in the playoffs, and now played 2 shifts. I think 6 minutes last. There's 2 shifts in the third period. I think.
Yeah, 6 minutes.
6 minutes. This is a guy who the last time the Oilers were in the playoffs, we all remember the massive impact he had, and. I spoke to Jason Strudwick for my article for Daily Hive, and he just said that he's not emotionally involved, and he has to for this team. Not the catalyst for them only having success, but it sure would help if Zach Kassian could straddle that line of playing on the edge and not taking penalties to generate some emotion for this team right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's it has been disappointing, right? Right from the first shift through 3 games. What's your thought? I mean, I guess former colleague of yours, Brian Swain, as well. He commented last night. I put the Twitter out that we'd be talking today, and he said, Oilers fans need to realize, right? Basically, I'm paraphrasing, that. This is a unique situation. They've gone so long without hockey, and now they're put into this bubble, and we don't need to blow everything up if we don't win this play-in series. Do you get a sense that fans are overreacting? I mean, we're Oilers fans, so we're always overreacting somehow. But
yeah, I was going to say, isn't that just 24/7?
Yeah, that's a 24/7 thing. But I mean, your thoughts on that? I mean, is this a real loss, or is this? I mean, I hate to use the term asterisk because we've been using it so much in terms of the playoffs. But if you lose the play-in round, is there at least an asterisk on this particular round?
Well, if your lottery ball comes up, then it's a great thing, right? Can you imagine the hockey world's explosion if the Oilers were to lose, or Pittsburgh for that matter, and one of these 2 teams gets Lafreniere? But I don't know. It's disappointing. It's the playoffs, right? And this is what you play for. And finally, the NHL, is playing for this situation. And fans. I think fans have a right to be disappointed. But listen, this is of the most bizarre scenarios anybody could really ever dream up. Like, I don't know if losing in this playoff round this year means worse than losing a couple of years ago against Anaheim, because that was actually a playoff. So I don't know. There's going to be all kinds of asterisks. But, whoever wins the cup at the end of this year, they're not going to care. And fan base can have the built-in excuse of saying, well, it's COVID and whatever it is and stuff. So I don't know. I guess it depends on what side of fence you are, but it's the playoffs, and that this is what fans live for. So I'm not surprised that Oiler fans are living and dying, dying after game 1, living after game 2, dying after, it's like a Friday the 13th series or something, right? The fans come back to life for the next game, and then they die, and then they come back to life after a win. So I don't know. I'm not faulting fans if they want to get over it, because listen, we've been through a hell of a lot of crap right now in 2020, globally. So fans bitching about the Oilers, I'm not going to hold it terribly against them. As long as they're not getting personal with, I think that's the worst, is you get personal with other people or fans or players. As long as they're not doing that, vent away and, take your mind off what's going on by being distraught about the Oilers, if you will.
Yeah, 100%. The other thing, I guess, I want to move to is, now that we've seen this, we've got, he started Smith and went back to Koskinen. Koskinen starts game 2 and game 3. You've got to assume, Koskinen wasn't awful last night. In fact, I think he made some stellar saves. I figure Koskinen's back in for game 4. You can make the wrong decision on goalie, I think, and I think it would be wrong to change him right now. What other changes might you make, or do you think? Obviously, I suspect Ennis is out. I actually haven't looked into it yet. Yeah. Do we kind of have an idea of who's drawing in for Ennis? Any changes you'd make?
Well, I certainly goaltending would not be a change I would be making. I'm with you. I would go right back to Koskinen because I thought he did make some good saves. I think you can make the wrong choice on a goaltender in a series once, and Dave Tippett did that. In my opinion, I'm not being a Monday morning quarterback. I stated that before that, and it didn't work out. He went with Mike Smith. It was obvious they had to go to Mikko Koskinen, and I think that he's played well enough to keep the reins. And in Ennis, the Oilers announced won't be playing Friday. I'd be shocked if we see Tyler Ennis. That just looked so painful. I don't know if it was the ankle or the knee, but there's a lot of medical experts on Twitter, and I'm not. I sometimes wear a Dr. Pepper shirt, but that's the extent of my medical knowledge. So as far as replacements, I think Haas is getting a lot of focus because of his speed and penalty killing ability. So I think he can take some draws and stuff like that. So I think I can bang that drum right now and go with that. I thought Ethan Bear got a lot of flack for that tip, but I thought he's been really good, and I didn't mind Caleb Jones. So on that end, you hope Adam Larson can get back in the lineup because you really depend on him. But I was really impressed with Kris Russel, and I thought the blue line wasn't the issue. It was the forwards, not, as I mentioned earlier, not chipping in their own end. So Haas would be the guy I would go with. I would keep Koskinen, and then you obviously hope that Larson can get back in. And if he can't, I don't mind going with the same pair as last night. Yeah,
and I thought Jones did well, all things considered. I mean, coming in, and that's a tough situation.
He played less than 10 minutes, right?
Yeah. Which was expected. I mean, you kind of expect that Tippett would play.
Sure.
And he's played, though, interestingly, the Bear Nurse line as a first line D pairing. They've had the most minutes so far. Well,
Clefbaum was at 27 last night.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, Clefbaum was up there last night. I haven't been impressed with Larson. I was... I of course I think though he's that kind of a guy that you need in the lineup, but I wouldn't take him out. But he's not played the way I think Larson's capable of playing. I thought he's made some poor reads.
Well, and maybe that's the reason why he missed the game, right?
That was my thought. I mean, I didn't. I actually caught the game late last night.
Maybe there's something wrong with him.
Yeah. So, and who knows? I mean, it's we'll see. I think the only change you'd probably see on D is if Larson draws back in, and then Jones will have to sit again. I'm curious, what do you think that there's any reason to put Nuge back on with Draisaitl and Yamamoto?
No, like I said, I don't think when you have over 4 goals, you're averaging over 4 goals a game. Your offense is not the problem. I would not touch what's going on. You just got the D train going last game with Leon Draisaitl, so he could start revving it up. McDavid's doing his thing. The only thing I would like to see from the forward group is just a little bit more. Well, obviously some more discipline in their own end and in the penalty box, but some more emotion too, right? But I don't have a problem with where the lines are right now, and we'll see what happens with Tyler Ennis' spot, and this is an opportunity for Athanasiou, who everybody was praising after game 2, and I thought he was really strong. And I don't think you need to do a whole lot with the lines, especially the top 6. Nugent Hopkins has 6 points in 3 games, and McDavid and Draisaitl are going. So offense is not the issue. I don't think they need to change any of the lines. I just think they need to get a little bit more emotion and more discipline.
Yeah, I'm 100%.
Do you think they need to make a change offensively?
I actually don't. I was just going to say, I mean, one of the things that I've actually been impressed with the offense is that, the Neal and Chason duo, right? I've actually liked the way those guys come out, bodies flying. I loved that Neal had Taze, stare him down last night. Like,
that's weird.
Yeah, I mean that's weird, but it tells you Neal's playing the kind of game where you want him to play, the kind of game where the other team hates him, right? And I love that, and I think that we need more of that, and I think you're 100% right. There's got to be a little bit more responsibility in the defensive zone from the forward group. I do, though. I wouldn't put it all on the forwards. I do that one play that I'm talking about. I mean, that's not the first time we've seen something like that. I think that the defensemen need to, they need to have a little bit more urgency. Bear, I mean, he's so solid. I think that it's too bad. Hopefully he comes back from that without any challenges, but he's been in that situation before, so I don't doubt that he'll be fine. I think that you got to keep the lines the same. I guess if I had one person I might change out for going into Game 4 is Kassian. I mean, we've talked a little bit about him, being uninspired. Maybe you sit him for a game and bring somebody in. I mean, it's an elimination game, right? And you got to put everything forward. And he's just been, for a guy that you expect to be noticeable, he's been anything but noticeable. And in fairness to him, he got 6 minutes on the ice last night, but there's a reason for only getting 6 as well. It's not because he couldn't have played more minutes. In fact, Tyler Ennis almost played as many minutes as he did, and he went out early with the injury, right? So I might, if I was Tippett, I might sit Kassian for a night and hope that you get to a Game 5 and bring him back with hopefully some fire and some desire to kind of earn his way back in the lineup, right? That's maybe the only change I'll make.
I'd be careful with that because you're already bringing in another guy, right? You have to replace Haas, and that's what Jason Strudwick and I talked a little bit about. Is that if you had Ennis, he maybe would consider that. But now you're already in. Then you're bringing in who else after Haas, right? You're bringing in 2 new guys that haven't played, jumping into this. I agree. Kassian has struggled. You look at his Game 1, he's 15 minutes and then 10.5 minutes and then 6. But maybe this has been the wake-up call. Is maybe now Dave Tippett goes to him and says, okay, this is why you played 6 minutes. Get your head in the game. You're going to start back up there because, Josh Archibald was up there and he didn't, wasn't a good penalty that he took. So maybe Kassian gets another shot. And maybe this is your way to motivate him and say, hey, you played 6 minutes last game. You're going to start on this line. If you don't show me something, playing on the edge while still being disciplined, you're going to go back to the 6 minutes. Maybe that's how you get something out of him. But I would be careful about bringing 2 new guys into the lineup if you don't have to. And, this is an opportunity to maybe, really motivate Zach Kassian.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I mean, tomorrow would be an interesting thing, right? I mean, this, for the most part, this squad hasn't been in many elimination games, right? They, so, it's all brand new to them. So I'd be curious. I think you're right. You're probably right. And Tippett's style is to do that kind of thing, like to give somebody a quick shot at it. It's the exact same reason why he went with Smith in Game 1, right? I mean, Smith had, in my mind, I would have picked Smith. I know I'm probably one of the few. I thought Smith was stellar in the Colorado Flames series last year. And, with the compete level that he has, I thought, go with your gut. And I liked it. And for about most of the
and
first
there's familiarity for the coach there too, right? Like he's been with Smith in the playoffs before.
Yeah, exactly. So I get it. it turned out to backfire a little bit, and you know, it wasn't all his fault, but certainly he missed a couple that you kind of figured he should, and sometimes that's the way it goes. I don't think, you know, I agree with Strudwick on the bad puck luck thing. I don't think the Oilers suffered from bad puck luck. I think that they, you know, that was the Blackhawks strategy, right? And you know, they put enough at the net that you could argue maybe they didn't have the puck luck either, right? Like they just I think the shot attempts were ridiculous, right? If I'd have to look at the stats on it, but they just kept throwing stuff at the net, right? I mean, and if
you saw
Russell's,
how frustrating Jonathan Toews was getting, right?
Yeah,
he
exactly.
he's staring down James Neal. He's trying to break sticks. He was getting turned away left, right, and center. I mean, the Hawks I thought they were just pounding the Oilers. Like they were always crashing the crease the whole night. You know, the defensemen were under siege.
Yeah, they were. And it was one of those games, and I asked you earlier, like, did you ever feel comfortable? I ended up watching the game on PVR last night. I got back late from my own hockey game, and I'm watching it, and the whole time I'm, you know, and I thankfully didn't get the score beforehand.
Oh, good.
But the whole time I'm watching it, and I just felt like this is a game that's not going to end well, right? Like I never once felt like the Oilers were, you know, I thought they were hanging on, and then to add in, you know, the undisciplined penalties and whether or not, I mean, you could, yeah, I was as pissed off as any fan about some of the officiating, but you know, that doesn't get that bad if you didn't have those actual penalties that, you know, any ref would have called. Right. And so you got to expect one or two bad calls, you know, a night. But it's those other ones that you can avoid. And that was awful.
Yeah. Like their actual discipline was just shocking with like, Kyler Yamamoto was going in, the numbers are staring right at him. And I know that the Oilers didn't like the Tyler Ennis hit. And, you know, I don't like seeing a guy get hurt. And, you know, I'm a big fan of Tyler Ennis, but he did see the hit coming and tried to get away from it, and that's probably what maybe caused the damage. If he maybe just rides it out, he maybe takes it on the shoulders. So I think there is a small difference between the two hits, but you know, it's a situation where the Oilers just constantly put themselves in bad position, and then it cost them with the goal, which is also at the end of the period too, right? And that's a momentum killer. They say the first and the last minute are the killers. And then, like I said earlier, it just keeps guys off the ice. So, you know, you have to realize, okay, they're calling this a certain way. We have to be a bit smarter. And you can be upset about some of the calls. I don't mind that. So that's fine. So if they take some of those calls away, the Oilers still probably took 4 bad penalties, right? That's still 4 opportunities. As it was, they gave Chicago 6 opportunities, and you know, there's a couple that you can argue about, but you know, it just piles on when you're taking such bad penalties. You're going to get the odd bad call every game, right? What team doesn't?
Yeah, absolutely, and you got to expect that, and but you got to just make sure that you play the discipline you need to play. So we're down to the last couple minutes here, and so I just ask you, what's your gut say going into tomorrow's game?
I think the Oilers will win tomorrow. I think, I'll pick Nugent Hopkins as the guy to play the hero. 6 straight goals from McDavid and Draisaitl. People always say you need more than McDavid and Draisaitl. Well, they're on separate lines. You could actually win with just those 2 guys scoring, but I think the Oilers are going to finally find their game tomorrow. And at least put together like a 75% of a complete hockey game, because we haven't seen 60 or 100% rather of a complete hockey game. But I think tomorrow they'll get the job done. They'll be the stronger team. Not saying they're going to be a perfect team. And I'll pick a guy like Ryan Nugent-Hopkins to score a few goals other than McDavid and Draisaitl. But I think they get it done tomorrow. I think that this team is going to show its resiliency. And don't be surprised with an all-world performance from McDavid again, because I talked to his former coach Chris Knobloch in Erie, and he said, this guy would just put the team on his back and carry us past Darnell Nurse's Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds. And while the NHL is different, it's Connor McDavid, and don't expect anything less. Yeah.
And what did you hear the praise from Versteeg around McDavid?
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty hefty praise. And I think the other thing that I'm 100% on board with what you're saying. The other thing that always comes to mind for me with both McDavid and Draisaitl, which is absolutely makes them elite players. They rarely ever have back-to-back nights where they're off, right? And McDavid, I mean, how many times in his NHL career, as short as it's been, has he ever had 2 nights without really being noticeable, right? And so I expect him to come back. He seems to make the adjustment. If he's got a bad game, I'd love to have a Connor McDavid bad game. And but he makes that adjustment and comes back and is absolutely stellar. So I expect big things from them. Hey, thanks for joining today, and good luck with all of the other stuff that you're doing. I hope that you're tracking the draft podcast, that it has very little meaning for the Edmonton Oilers this year. I mean, it's. Of course, I think the world will explode if the Oilers happen to take home Lafreniere in the draft.
I can't imagine what listen, playoffs are fun, and I'm enjoying watching the playoffs. And first and foremost, I grew up in Manitoba, so the Jets are my team. That's the team I really want to see go the distance. I did cover the Oilers, and I was an Oilers fan as a kid, but I'm kind of detached as a fan. So don't take this the wrong way, but I would almost rather see the Oilers get Lafreniere just to see the hockey world explode. Because you remember what it was like with McDavid. There's conspiracy theories, and we're like, if it was a conspiracy theory, why would you put McDavid in Edmonton? You would put him in an Eastern time zone. So just to see the reaction, particularly from maybe Leaf Nation, but everybody else, if the Oilers actually got another first overall pick, would be because everybody thinks they mishandled so many of them, right? And it's just like it's like the rich parent giving a kid another keys to the car after he just crashed the Porsche or something. And not to say they have done that with any of the guys lately, but they did mishandle some picks. So just to see the hockey world explode, it would be interesting. But I do enjoy watching playoff hockey, and the greatest player in the game in the playoffs is the greatest thing to watch of all time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thanks again for joining today, Dean, and hopefully we've got more Oilers talk about in the latter rounds, and best of luck. If you ever need a correspondent in Halifax, I'm packing up and moving to Halifax, and already planning on buying Moosehead season tickets. So I'll get to know the queue a little bit, and nice fast league, so that should be a lot of fun. But yeah, the nice thing, I was talking to a fellow that's on the Eastern time zone right now, is he watches his team, and then a couple hours later he gets to watch the Oilers, and so he kind of gets a back-to-back, which is there's some benefits to having the late game. I mean, I've PVR'd so many Oilers games because they're on when I'm doing something, and I pretty much have to turn my phone off. Right? Like, if I don't want to see the score, I absolutely hate knowing the score. I like to cheer as if I'm watching it live.
Sure.
So it'll be nice.
Well,
not
good
to
luck
have to
in
do that.
Halifax, man. That's exciting. I'm excited for you. That arena, from everything I've seen, is awesome, and that area loves its hockey. And now you get to do the same thing. You can watch the Eastern games and then stay up late. A little bit late, and watch the Western games. I'm excited for you, Mike.
Yeah, hey, and when I'm wrong about something, I can just blame it on not being able to stay up that late, right? Yeah.
That's right.
All right. Thanks
Yeah,
again,
no
Dean.
problem.
Let's
Okay, take
let's
care,
hope
man.
we got some good news later. Thanks. Have a good one.
All right.
Oilers Live.